I use a highlighter. You don't have to highlight. I have to figure out which variable to solve for. Then I go back. Then I go back in the equation. This is not a good class to record. I'll try. Then I go back in the equation and I circle the term that has the y, or in this case, the y, or whatever variable we're solving for. So I know to get rid of everything else. All right. Again, I'm going to put my line here at the equal sign so I don't, whatever tells me whatever I have to do to one. What are you doing? Were you dancing in your chair or something? Okay, so I know I got to get the y by itself. Here I'm adding 7x, right? So I'm going to undo the 7x by subtracting 7x from both sides. Now, 8 and 7x are unlike terms. Okay? If you put it directly underneath the 8, chances are you're going to take 8 minus 7. And it's not, you can't combine this. So I'm going to put it off to the side a little bit. So I try not to do it, make that mistake. So these add up to 0. I'm going to bring down my positive y, my equal sign. Now, I like putting the variable term first. So I'm going to put my negative 7x first plus 8. You don't have to. I'm just saying eventually you may want to because this one happens to be in slope intercept form, right? Piece of cake. You're probably thinking to yourself, I don't even need him to lecture on this. Oh, but it gets funner.
Runner?
Funner.
I love that.
It's not a word.
Funner.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, this is funner. It's going to get funner for us.
Why put the negative sign in front of the 8?
I'm sorry, what?
Why put the negative sign in front of the 8?
Did I put the negative sign in front of 8?
No, he's talking about the negative.
Like, why wouldn't you just like?
7x,
like-
like-
Oh, you mean the negative 7x?
Yeah.
Because that's standard form. Okay, that's actually a good question. If you think about standard form, this is standard form for a parabola, right? Quadratic. There's actually an x here. We just normally don't write it. This is x to the first. This is x to the 0. And that's why we end up with a constant because x to the 0 is always 1. So really, what this is negative 7x to the first plus 8x to the 0. Do you see how it's in standard form from largest degree to lowest degree? Okay. It's just, as a math teacher, I'm always going to put it in standard form. Your concept here is isolating variables. You really shouldn't have to worry about what form it's in. Okay. So I'm not going to be grading on that. Great question. Ooh, a math question right off the bat. I like that. Wow. I'm a happy camper. All right, so I need to solve for t. I'm going to circle t. And I'm going to ask myself, well, what operation, it's with a p and an r, right? What mathematical operations there? Between the p, the r, and the t? Multiplication, right? So how do I get rid of or undo multiplication?
Division.
Divide. Okay, so I'm going to divide, but what I don't want the p and the r. Okay, so the p cancels out, the r cancels out, and I'm left with the t. And over here, I really don't care what it looks like because they just told me to solve for p or t. by 1 over P and R. That's my answer.
Ew.
Pretty cool, huh?
It's really that simple.
It's that easy.
That's actually kind of cool.
Wow, we got numbers and now it's not.
Uh-oh. It's getting harder.
New brace.
Solve for X, all right?
You lost it.
I'm going to go ahead and circle my X term. So I want to get rid of, and here's my equation. I want to get rid of my minus 9y, correct? So I'm going to add 9y to both sides. I'm going to put it off here to the side. In fact, I saw somebody do this horizontally. I don't know what class it was. It was on somebody's homework. I'm like, oh boy, that we really should be doing it horizontally. I don't know why we do it vertically, but whoever did that had Mr. Johnson for algebra or back in middle school because he's the only one that does that. Okay, so I'm going to bring down my 11x. These add up to 0 equals, and again, I'm going to put my algebraic term first, my positive 9y, and then I have a negative 4. Still have to solve for x, right? I have multiplication between my variable and my coefficient, so I have to undo multiplication. I'm going to divide by the coefficient 11. Now, I don't care how you do it over here because we're just interested in getting variables isolated.
Where did you get the 4? Oh, that's an 11.
Yeah, I just brought it down.
Dude, my eyesight sucks.
No, this does get confusing. So x equals 9y minus 4. Now, if you're going to simplify, take it a couple of steps further. This one you can't, but a lot of problems you can. You could separate these into two fractions and simplify them. I don't care. Either form is fine. If it's unsimplified, I'm good with that. So it's still not too bad, right? Okay, so let's look at number 4. They want us to solve for y. And when I usually get to number 4, I ask students, here's a y, here's a y. I got to get y by itself. How do we go about this? Any ideas? Anyone? Anyone?
What?
Any ideas how to get y by itself? Anyone? You?
Yeah.
How?
Would you like to do something with the Y?
We do something with the y. What do you want to do?
No.
Huh? Combine them?
Yeah, that's the word.
Okay. So you want to take x, y minus a 1y. How do we do that? What's x minus 1?
X minus 1. Negative x 1. Or no, 0.
So x minus 1 equals 0. What if x equals 2 or 3 or 4?
There's just negative x.
So negative x equal. So this equals negative x.
What is that?
I don't know. It equals math. But they're not like terms.
In other words, we can't combine them because they're unlike terms, right?
Yeah. So we're gonna divide.
Divide by what?
By y.
You were trying to say
By
y,
A.
weren't you?
By y.
Yeah.
Oh, you had it. Divide by y, right? We could do that. So, do you want me to divide every term by y?
No.
What do you want me to do?
Not really.
Shh, gentlemen, I'm going to make you do this.
Maybe just. Wait, actually, you have to divide everything.
Huh?
You have to divide everything by one, right? Right? No?
I'm going to give you a hint. No, we do not have to divide everything by y.
Okay, so just divide x, y, minus
Okay. So we're gonna take this and divide by y. But you're right. I mean, if we're changing the values here, we would have to divide by y, right? Right, gentlemen? And I use that term loosely. However, if I do not want to change the value and I divide both of these by y, we can do that, can't we? If I had parentheses and put the y out here, I could multiply them and get back to where it was, right? So if I divide out the y here, that leaves me with x. If I divide out the y, well, anything over itself is just 1, right? Aren't these exactly the same? So I didn't change the value. I can do that only to one side. I can do that if I don't change the value of the term, right? Because I can always get back to that. Y times x is xy. Y times minus 1 is minus y. So this is the distributive property, right? So I just did the distributive property backwards. There's no mathematical term for that. So I like to call it undistribute because there's nothing else to call it. I think it's easy. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
So I took two terms. How many terms is this? How many terms is this? Inside the parentheses, it's two terms.
So three. So one.
But because it's in parentheses, it's a number, right? Whatever x minus 1 is. Is a number, and we're multiplying it to another number. So I have a number times a number. That's one term, right? So we want to divide it. I want to undo, just like we did up here. I want to undo it by everything we don't want. And what we don't want is that x minus 1. But this time, I'm changing the value, so I have to do it to both sides, right? So look at this. These cancel because it's multiplication. I'm left with the y, and I got this whole mess over here. 10 divided by x minus 1. But I got y by itself. Wasn't that smart? Good job.
Good job, Elaine. Such brains.
Question? Oh, yeah. You guys don't have to ask, it just, got to go to the restroom and go. All right, number 5. Says I have to solve for A.
That's how Mr. Hardy was.
Hmm?
That's how Mr. Hardy was. Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, just cool. I mean, you guys aren't like 8 years old anymore. You have to ask to use the restroom, even though most teachers tell you to ask. I'm like, just you're behind a $5,000 hunk of metal that can kill me. Do you really need to ask permission for the restroom? All right, so got to solve for A. Here's an A. Here's again, just like this problem, we have the variable in two terms, right? So it means I'm going to have to, at some point, undistribute, but I can't do it yet because I'm not on the same side of that equal sign, right? So let me get it over to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 5a from both sides. Now, it's too bad these aren't like terms because then I could just combine them, right? But I can't. They're not like terms. So I have AB minus 5A. These add up to 0, and I have a positive 4. Now I have them on both on the same side, both terms on the same side, and they both include an A. So whatever these have in common is what I'm gonna take out. And lucky for me, it's the A. So AB divided by A, because we're undistributing, right? Distribute uses multiplication. AB divided by A, I'm dividing the A out, I get a B. 5A divided by A gives me 5. Now I'm down to one term that has multiplication. So I'm going to divide by the B minus 5, B minus 5. My B minus 5's cancel. I get my A equals this mess 4 over B minus 5. Okay? Now that was fun. I'm going to go home tonight and you're going to be so excited because that was so fun. I'm not sure if 6 is funner. We'll have to see.
Funner's not a word.
It's
No,
funner.
it's not.
Okay, for B. So here's my B. My B is locked in that numerator, isn't it? So I'm going to get rid of the fraction because I don't like fractions. Yes, ma'am.
We like multiplying 5.
Yeah.
And then multiply by the 4 too.
Yep. So we want to get rid of that denominator 5. So we're going to multiply by that denominator. Okay, if we put that over 5 over 1, the 5's cancel out, and I'm left with B plus 3A. 4 times 5, 20. Those of you who need to use fingers, use your fingers and toes.
Wait, see what would you? So what if you don't have that many? Like,
If they got lopped off,
no, like what if you only have like 9 fingers?
I guess you're up a creek. All right, still have to solve for the B. Gonna subtract 3A from both sides. I get the B equals, I like putting my algebraic terms first. So negative 3A plus 20, my answer. That my last hour, there's one in every crowd.
What do you mean by that?
When are you ever going to use this in real life?
Right.
There's one in every crowd.
When are we ever gonna? No, I'm kidding.
When?
Well, actually, the next problem you do use in real life. In fact, my brother-in-law just called me. He's making cement steps in his house, and he asked me for the volume, how much cement he needed. So I asked him for the length, width, and height, and I figured out the volume that he needed. This is a real life problem.
Wow.
Pretty
Wow.
cool, huh? Huh?
Proud of you?
Kind of.
Are you proud of me?
Wow.
And I
You should have told him
Did
to
you
figure
give
it
the
out
wrong
yourself.
answer?
did that to a neighbor once because he owned his own construction company. Didn't know how to do. It was a piece of property that was on a hyperbole. Took me a couple times to figure it out, and he took it to court. I had to back my stuff up. Rewrite the formula, isolating the height. This is volume of a pyramid. So we have to isolate the h, right? So where's my h? Here it is. We have that same problem again, don't we? Fraction that everybody loves to work with. So we're going to get rid of our fraction again, right, Elaine? We're going to multiply it by the denominator. 3. So I have 3v. These 3's cancel, and I'm left with L. That's a cursive L, by the way. W and H. And we're back to problem number 2, right? We have all multiplication where I want the h. So I'm going to divide by what I don't want, the L and the W, the L and the W. So that leaves me with 3V over LW equals H. Okay? Now, just like section 1.4 part 1, they're given substitution stuff. Let's see. Volume is 240. So wherever I see a variable, I'm going to put parentheses. So volume is 240. V is 240. See, length, 10. My L is 10. And what else do I have? The width,
It's not.
9. 9. And plug that all into my handy dandy calculator.
I can't find my calculator. And I had it last year.
Uh-oh. This gets heavily dependent on a calculator.
Probably like.
Oh, by the way, when you plug this into your calculator, if you're going to put the whole thing in there,
Put in parentheses.
you have to put each, the numerator and the denominator, in its own parentheses. So I have 3 times 240, parenthesis, divided by, parenthesis, 10, close parenthesis, another set, 9, parenthesis, 8. So the height is 8 what? Centimeters, right? And you're just saying, Mr. D, I can't take all this excitement. Please give me the homework sheet so I can do it.
No.
Okay.